Hi, welcome back to Storytime with Angel. We are back in the abode of Sweet Pea the Giant Wonder Cat. Hopefully Sweet Pea will behave and not try and talk too much to us. This week I have two science fiction pieces to read you. They're very different pieces. I'll read one today and then one tomorrow or Friday. These are both from the MCB Quarterly, the second edition, volume 2, that just came out at the end of July. And what we have here are science fiction pieces by Mina McLeod and Cairo Amani. I want to read from the Cairo Amani piece today. It's called Healing Agent. This is a little bit darker than the other science fiction piece. This is a queer science fiction story, one with a queer protagonist, but it is mostly science fiction, obviously. It's just a really, really interesting story. It was one of those stories that I finished and sort of went, whoa. So I just want to read a little bit from the beginning here for you, and then we'll read the other one tomorrow. So this is from Healing Agent by Cairo Amani. It was toughest to kill the children, so of course Mercy took the mission. Mercy knew the girl would be quarantined until she arrived to treat her, and Mercy dreaded her own arrival. She was never the person someone wanted knocking on the door. She leaned back and let the seat cradle her in soft leather. Her feet, clad in worn brown boots, relaxed on the seat from across from her. A large black and silver gun leaned between her knees. Two smaller pistols were strapped to her hips, but those were filled with medicine capsules. This was a small mission in a smaller town, and there would be no need for backup. That was fine with her. The agency hadn't given her a permanent partner, and the temps they'd given her were all flawed. Too slow, too clumsy, too chatty. The last trait was perhaps the worst of all, but Mercy's supervisor didn't get that. "Just tell him to shut up, then," he had said. "Trust me, you don't want me to shut him up." Mercy hadn't been paired since. A quick sneak into the agency's computer files had shown her why. Agent 49, Mercy Traylor, is difficult, has a dangerous temper, does not work well with others. Complaint, complaint, complaint. People cowered when she walked through headquarters. They whispered. They looked the other way as if they didn't see her, but she could feel their eyes on her back. She was the stone-faced killer. Known for her willingness to take the missions other people wouldn't. The elderly, the infected schools, the infected daycare centers, and once, even a maternity ward had caught the virus. Women and infants all shedding and melting skin. The first and only time someone asked her how she was able to look at her targets in the eye without even flinching at her shot, she shrugged. "They're not human anymore," she said. The virus wasn't the old flu strain. It acted like a living, breathing, intelligent being. It might have been a parasite that knew how to morph a person's face to extract sympathy from someone. Many agents had fallen victim to that game. Mercy never would. Behind her back, they called her Mercy the Merciless, or Black Widow Woman, and she let it roll off her shoulders like rain on her leather jacket. She was one of the oldest agents in the League, and one of the front-runners of the organization. They could say what they wanted. She watched the city disappear slowly as the train slid into the outskirts of the colony. Brown stalks of wheat rose tall like buildings, dwarfing the small houses spread out among them. She took a deep breath and checked her ammo. Chances were she wouldn't need the larger gun. She was there at the town's request, and she didn't expect anyone to protest, especially to the point where she would need protection. The big gun was just for deterring aggressive civilians. The guns on her hips were for healing. The virus had appeared only 3 years after humans first settled on Winston RJ-16. A few mistook the victims of the virus for aliens, but that was short-lived. A year later, the virus was identified and research companies set to work finding a cure. 50 years later, there was no cure, but there was suppressant. The suppressant would hold off the effects of the virus if discovered early enough, and it often wasn't. But when injected into someone with a full-blown outbreak, it would kill the parasite and the infected. Then the agents entered. No one met Mercy at the station. She strapped her gun to her back, put her hands in her pockets, and walked. The sun was still high in the sky when the path turned into an actual road, however primitive, and houses came into view. The children wore ragged clothing and played in the streets, moving out of the way when a vehicle passed. Mercy was unaccustomed to the dust the wheels kicked up. In the city, everyone drove hover vehicles. They were silent and clean. The streets were crowded, but the townsfolk looked scared, worried. They stepped out of her way, but stopped to stare. It wasn't the same sort of gazing her co-workers did. This was a strange, revering look, one of fear and admiration, the look of a lesser being might give a god. A fork in the road read Dixie Street and Heartland Lane. Mercy took the left to Heartland. The houses should have had gardens of grass and trees, but everything was dust here, dust and trash. Mercy wondered if there was one sidewalk where she stepped. Maybe the dust had collected over concrete. House 265 on Heartland was possibly the nicest house on the street, she thought. But that didn't mean anything except that its windows were all clear and whole, and there were steps and a railing, no matter how chipped or rickety. The doormat read, "Welcome to our humble home," but it was so worn Mercy could hardly read the letters. She knocked on the door and waited. She knocked again and listened. The house was silent. Protocol was to walk around to find another door, inspect the premises, then knock on the doors of the neighbors. Protocol wasted time. She readied herself to kick the knob off, but then the door opened. The woman who stood there had frizzy brown hair past her shoulders and wore a loose white shirt and jeans. Her eyes were wide, but she didn't seem scared. The woman was about Mercy's height, which meant she was short, although Mercy was thin. This woman seemed more delicate, fragile enough to make Mercy nervous. "The agency sent you?" "Yes, I'm Mercy." "Angela. I'm Kaya's sister. I'll take you to her." Mercy followed Angela through the dark house. The rooms were nearly bare, and the furniture present was messy, toppled over, ripped and dusty. It wasn't surprising. Most of the infected tried to escape, sleepwalked, or had violent outbursts. Soon the families realized it was futile to clean up every single time, and after that the mess developed a place of its own. The stairs creaked when they ascended and echoed. The interior of the house was large, but knowing the people in this poor town, they had probably built their house from scratch a few years ago. Angela opened Kaya's door gently. The girl sat up in bed. Her eyes were bloodshot and surrounded by dark spots. Her hair, frizzy like her sister's, was messy and tangled. She wore a dingy gray housecoat and lay in soiled bedsheets. She was peppered with cuts and bruises. She was fighting it, impressively so, but the way her bone kissed her thin skin in some areas and the way flesh masses had formed in others told Mercy she was losing the battle. There were people around the bed, all sitting on the floor, legs folded. Each person had a candle before him. One unguarded candle must have belonged to Angela. The family was praying. Mercy had seen this before, simple-minded folk still clinging to the old ways, assuming they could fix the physical with the spiritual. She cleared her throat. The people on the floor turned, and Kaya looked up at her. "Are you the executioner?" Kaya's voice was so clear, so hollow, Mercy's heart shriveled and rattled in her rib cage. She kept her calm outwardly. "I'm a healer agent." "A healer agent." Kaya's words were wet, nestled in saliva. "Tell me, when I'm healed, will I still be alive?" Mercy wondered if it was the parasite talking. It was an intelligent thing. "No, you won't." "Very well." Kaya shut her eyes tightly and her body tensed. The skin on her arm ripped a little. The small trickle of blood slithered from her mouth. She was struggling, but her control was amazing. "Our great-grandfather is a true healer," Angela nodded to the oldest man in the circle. "With his help, 2 of my aunts have been cured of cancer, and 1 small baby of colic. We are working on Kaya." "Then why did you call me?" "We asked for backup, but the agency wouldn't listen. They sent you early. You were meant to be a last resort." "I'm always the last resort." Mercy squared her jaw. But I come after quarantine, in an incubator, after treatment. Kea hasn't had any of that. It's too late. We don't think it's too late. Angela grabbed Mercy's wrist. I can't go back now. It's against code to see an infected and not heal it. We don't want you to go back. We just need a bit more time. You don't get more time. Mercy reached for her gun, but everyone stood and came to gather in front of Kea, unafraid of her disease and unafraid of Mercy. How much more time? She folded her arms, twisting from Angela's burning grip. It was an easy escape. Agents were genetically enhanced to deal with the physical strain of fighting the outbreaks. She hated when people touched her. A day or two? You're more than welcome to sleep here for that time. No, Mercy shook her head. That's too long for one mission that's only 2 hours away. I should be finished already. One day, Mercy didn't answer. How about 2 hours? The old man rose to his feet. 2 hours of prayer before you kill her. From the looks of her, she's already been dealing with the infection for weeks, which is far longer than anyone should. What good will 2 hours do when nothing has worked so far? Miracles happen that we can't always see immediately. Angela kept her eyes on Mercy's. We have procedures for these things. Since you won't give us a few days, we'll skip to the end. All right. That is Healing Agent from Cairo Amani. Once again, that is in the MCB Quarterly Volume 2 that just came out July 31st. That has 4 really amazing stories in it. Also has an interview with Erica Orrick, who's a marvelous editor and has a lot to say about the editing process and authors. And a spotlight with S.A. Collins, who talks about his work and what his goal is in writing gay fiction and some of the things that he wants to accomplish. It also has a flash fiction piece from S.A. Collins, which is a lot of fun too. So we have a lot of really, really great content in this Volume 2. Volume 1 also had some lovely content, if you want to go back and check that one out as well. Tomorrow we'll be reading from the last story in this second volume of our e-magazine, and that will be from Mina McLeod, that's Communication Down. Is another science fiction piece, and we will get to that then. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening.